There is a cleanup crew inside every cell in your body. Right now, as you sit here, some of them are already at work. You've felt them before, even if you didn't know it. That afternoon you skipped lunch, and somewhere around 3 o'clock your stomach growled once, and then went quiet. And a strange thing happened. You expected to feel worse, weak, foggy, low. But sometimes you didn't. Sometimes you felt oddly clear. For most of your life, you were taught that this feeling meant something was wrong, that an empty stomach was a problem to be solved as quickly as possible. But what if that quiet, empty hour was not a problem at all? What if it was an invitation? What if that was the exact moment your body had been waiting for? Here is what almost everyone believes about eating. More food more often is safer. Keep the tank full. Never let it run low. Snack between meals so your energy never dips. It sounds sensible. It feels responsible. But your cells were not built for a world with a refrigerator in it. For nearly all of human history, food arrived unevenly. There were hours, and sometimes days, with nothing at all. And your body did not just tolerate those gaps, it uses them. To understand how, you have to shrink yourself down past your organs, past your tissues, into a single one of your trillions of cells. Inside that cell, things get worn out. Proteins fold the wrong way and stop working. Tiny internal structures get damaged, like old parts in a machine that has been running for years. Most of the time, your cell simply keeps going, clutter and all. But every cell also contains something remarkable. A set of small internal sacs, called lysosomes, filled with enzymes that can break almost anything down. For a long time, scientists thought of them only as the cell's trash bags, a place where waste sat. A researcher named Christian de Duve discovered these structures in the 1950s, and he noticed something more interesting than trash bags. Sometimes the cell was deliberately wrapping up its own broken parts and feeding them into these sacs on purpose, not waste being dumped, a process being run. In 1963, de Duve gave that process a name built from Greek: auto, self, phagy, eating, autophagy, self-eating. Your cells were quietly consuming pieces of themselves, and no one yet understood why or how. For 30 years, the mechanism stayed a mystery. Then, in the 1990s, a Japanese biologist named Yoshinori Ohsumi sat down with something almost embarrassingly simple: baker's yeast. He starved it, and then he watched, through a microscope, for genes that switched on when food ran out. One by one, he found them. More than a dozen genes, each one a piece of machinery for this self-eating process. He had found the crew. Tiny membranes that formed inside the starving cell, wrapped themselves around damaged proteins and broken components, sealed shut like a garbage bag being tied off, and hauled the whole bundle to the lysosome to be broken down. The parts were then reused, rebuilt into fresh material the cell actually needed. It wasn't destruction. It was demolition and recycling running at the same time. In 2016, Ohsumi was awarded the Nobel Prize for this discovery. The cleanup crew finally had a face, a mechanism, and a name. But here's the detail that changes everything about how you live. This crew does not work at full strength all the time. It has a switch, and that switch is sensitive to one thing above all else: whether you have just eaten. When food arrives, especially food rich in sugar and protein, your cells sense abundance. A master signaling pathway, often called mTOR, senses that nutrients are plentiful and tells the cell, grow, build, use what you have. That's a sensible message after a meal. But that same message also tells the cleanup crew to stand down. Growth and cleanup don't run at full speed at the same time. Your cell has to choose. And when you eat constantly, from morning until late at night, snack after snack, that growth signal barely ever turns off. The crew stays parked, waiting for a shift that never quite starts. So think again about that quiet, empty hour. When you go a stretch of time without eating, that abundance signal fades, and the moment it fades, The crew gets its cue. The cleanup surges, damaged proteins get bundled up, worn-out components get broken down and reused. That mild, hollow feeling in your stomach isn't your body failing. It may be the sound of demolition starting on schedule. This is not about willpower or suffering or proving something to yourself. It's biology responding to a gap, the way it has for nearly the entire history of your species. Now, why would this matter as you get older? Because as the decades pass, cellular clutter is exactly the kind of thing that tends to pile up. Damaged proteins that don't get cleared, worn components that don't get replaced. Researchers studying aging across many species, from worms to mice, have found that autophagy tends to slow down with age, and in several of those studies, animals with a more active cleanup crew tended to live longer, healthier lives. We have to be careful here. Much of that evidence comes from lab animals, not humans, and your body is a far more complicated story than any one pathway. But the pattern is intriguing enough that scientists studying human aging have taken it seriously. A researcher named Valter Longo, who studies fasting and longevity in people, has spent years exploring what happens when humans build regular, gentle gaps into their eating. His work, and the work of others in this field, suggests that giving your body real stretches of time without food may support this cleanup system, not just in a lab dish, but in you. The details are still being worked out. This is active science, not a settled fact. But the underlying idea is no longer in question. Your body already owns this technology. You don't need to buy it or activate it with anything exotic. You only need to give it the conditions it's been waiting for. So what does that actually look like in an ordinary life? It is not about extremes. It's not about long punishing stretches with nothing at all. For most people, it can be as simple as closing the kitchen a little earlier in the evening and letting breakfast wait a little later than usual. Building in a real honest gap somewhere in your day or your week, rather than grazing from the moment you wake until the moment you sleep. Small, sustainable, boring even. Which is exactly what makes it durable. And this is important, especially if you're older, or living with diabetes, or taking medication where timing and food matter. Fasting isn't automatically safe for everyone. Certain medications need food alongside them. Some health conditions make skipping meals genuinely risky. So before you change your own eating pattern in any real way, talk with your doctor. Let them help you find a gap that fits your body, your medications, and your life. This isn't a script to follow blindly. It's a system to work with, carefully, and on purpose. So think again about that skipped lunch, that quiet stomach. You used to hear that silence as a warning. Now you know it might be something else entirely. Somewhere inside you right now, tiny membranes may be forming, wrapping around the worn and the broken, carrying them away to be taken apart and rebuilt into something usable again. A crew that has been showing up for this shift for nearly the entire history of your species. The only question is whether you ever let them clock in.